Assalamu alaikum, greetings of peace, loved ones. This is Baraka Blue, and you're tuned into Path and Present podcast. This episode is with Dr. Malik Badri. Dr. Badri is a psychologist and professor of psychology at the International Islamic University of Malaysia, where he's been a professor for a few decades, over a couple decades actually. And this was a great honor because I was able to sit with him during his last week before retiring. And so he's really reflecting on his life and his journey. He's well into his 80s, and he's lived an amazing and really multifaceted life. So he's reflecting on that, and his specialty is in Islamic psychology. And particularly, he's looking at the tradition of psychology historically in Islam, ilm al-nafs, and then how that relates to the modern world. So I first became aware of him because that's an area of interest for me, and I found a book called Contemplation, an Islamic psycho-spiritual study in which he really looks at the idea of tafakkur, meditation or contemplation, and its effect on the soul. He's also written a book called The Dilemma of Muslim Psychologists. He wrote a book, or translated a book, of Abu Zayd al-Balkhi, which is called Sustenance of the Soul, and is a cognitive behavior therapy text that was written in the 9th century. So he's looking at classical Islamic texts on psychology. What does it say about the soul? Of course, psychology means literally study of the soul. And so he's reflecting on that in the modern context, and he has a lot of really interesting insights. He's definitely a pioneer in that field. So just that alone makes him a really interesting guest. But in addition, he is someone who was a very dear friend of Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, also known as Malcolm X, Allah yarhamahu. So I wanted to explore his relationship with Malcolm, and especially because he was friends with Malcolm early on when Malcolm was in the nation and first traveled abroad and first went to Africa, to the Sudan, which is where Dr. Badri is from. And he befriended him there, and they became close, and he hosted Malcolm. And then he maintained a relationship with Malcolm all the way through Malcolm's kind of transformations into Sunni Islam, and then through his travels, and then up until his last days. So he shared his interactions and his relationship with Malcolm, and that was a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I'll let you listen, because basically this is a 2-hour podcast, I believe, something around there. And mostly I just let him talk. I asked a few questions, but he was very generous with his time and amazingly, generous of spirit, and he's somebody who's in his mid-80s, but he has this like twinkle in his eye that is like incredibly youthful. He has this timeless quality, and just being in his presence was really sweet, and really healing. And it was a great honor because my intention with Path and Present is to magnify and share the stories in our communities, but particularly to preserve the stories of our elders and those of our predecessors, our Salaf, because they won't be here forever, and many of them are passing from this realm every day and every week. So it was a great honor to have him telling his story, especially as he was looking back on his life and his career and getting ready to retire and return to his country of origin. So I'll give you the podcast, and I pray you enjoy. Lastly, thank you so much for supporting Path and Present with your prayers, with your sharing it, commenting, liking, rating it on iTunes. Thank you very much. If you want to support financially and keep us going, you can do so through Patreon. Patreon.com/pathandpresent is our page there, and that allows you to give an amount that is easy for you on a monthly basis. Yeah. So shout out to everybody who's contributing and who's supporting and allowing us to devote the time to it, and also allowing us to take the time to travel to meet these people. I happened to be in Malaysia for a tour, and I carved out a few days afterwards just to do nothing but meet people for the podcast. So Dr. Badri was at the top of the list, and there's a few other people that I was able to sit with, alhamdulillah, in Malaysia. So hopefully in the coming weeks, I'll be sharing those as well. Yes, keep me in your prayers. Keep me in your love and light. If you heard some loud animal noises while I'm recording this, be not alarmed. I'm halfway in the jungle, halfway in a rural village in Indonesia, so there's a lot of birds and a lot of chickens and who knows what else out here. So forgive the cockadoodle doing, and until next time, it's all love. Dr. Malik, it's an honor to be here to meet you.
Thank you very much.
And it's interesting when you've read someone's works and benefited from them, but never met them, to finally meet them.
Alhamdulillah.
So
Alhamdulillah.
It's an honor to meet you. So I want to ask you about your work and your life, especially now as you're at the end of your many years here at the university.
Yes.
And particularly looking at when I read your book about contemplation, tafakkur.
No.
It's the idea that psychology is, psyche in Greek is the soul, the study of the soul.
Yes.
But in the modern world, psychology seems to have lost its soul. And of course, in the Islamic tradition, there's this profound concept of the soul and the ilm al-nafs, and the ruh, and the qalb, and the levels of the nafs al-amara bisu, and nafs al-lawama, nafs al-mutma'ina, and all these terms. So, and of course, I also want to get to your relationship with Malcolm.
Yes.
So, but maybe first you could speak about your journey and your studies and your research and your life.
Yeah.
And then maybe we could get into the modern world, the materialist kind of reductionist idea of what is the human being.
Yes.
Versus what is the traditional Islamic understanding of the soul?
No. Yes. So, inshallah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Thank you very much, Brother James. I am honored to have this interview. I am a Sudanese born in February 1932. So it was 16th of February 1932. I just have had my 85th birthday a few days ago. I was born in a small town. At the time, it was like a village. In this little small town, its name is Rufa'a, by the Blue Nile. It's about 2 hours from the city, the capital city, Khartoum. My father was an educator. He was the first person to start a girls' school in the Sudan. And he started this school in 1907. So now this little kindergarten became a university for women. So they have had 100 years since he started the school. The name of the school is Ahfad. And Ahfad stands for the plural for grandson, Hafid. Because the natives, the Sudanese in that place refused girls' education. So he started with his own grandchildren. So he called it Grandchildren's School. So now the Ahfad is a university with 7 faculties in the capital of the Sudan. When I was born at the time in which my father, when he found it very difficult to continue, he moved the school to the capital in the very same year in which I was born. All my education, primary and secondary education, was in my father's school in the Ahfad. And then I stayed for a year or so in the University of Khartoum. Then I got a scholarship to study in the American University of Beirut. This is where I went in 1953. I got my first and second degrees from the American University, and I got my PhD from Leicester University, England. Now, I was not intending to study psychology. When I went to the American University, I was to study general science, physics, chemistry, and biology, to come back as a teacher in our school. I loved physics, and the head of the department at the time wanted me to major in physics. When I came in the second year in the university, I started biology. Then I shifted to biology. And then we took courses, compulsory courses in psychology. Then after this, I found that I loved this area more than any other area, education and psychology. So I graduated from the American University, and because it was a degree with distinction, I was given a Rockefeller scholarship for 1 year, during which I finished my master's. And then the British Council gave me a scholarship to study for my PhD, which, alhamdulillah, I finished. I was in Leicester, but I used to go to Leeds. For my supervisor was in Leeds, in the Department of Psychology. It was very nice time, a bit of a jihad, if you can call it, intellectual jihad, because I was very poor at the time. The British Council gives a scholarship to the student about 39 sterling pounds to eat, to drink, to wash his clothes, to transport himself, whatever.
39 pounds a month?
A month,
so
yeah.
You were living on, wow, that's about £1 a day, just a little over £1 a day.
Yeah, because at that time, of course, things were cheap, but still it was very little for at the time. And then I already was in Leicester, because I married that year, and my wife was with me in Leicester. I didn't like Leeds in comparison. Leicester was neither a big city nor also a too small. It was a very nice place. So I liked Leicester very much. So, but I had to see my supervisor every 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And the price of the railway ticket was too high for me. So I simply started to save a little bit of money, and then I bought a Vespa, used Vespa. So I would drive this Vespa all the way from Leicester to Leeds. But whenever I arrived there, it would be late in the afternoon. And then I did not pray Zuhur and Asr, Jam'an. So I didn't know where to go. In 1953, things were very different from today, you see. So I went to a church. Somehow I discovered it is a Unitarianist church. So the priest told me, please come and pray. And if you come at any time in which the church is closed, this is my house next to the church. Just ring the bell I will open the church for you. Alhamdulillah, it was at that time, things were very different from today. This was the pre-Daesh period.
Pre-ISIS, yeah.
So, Alhamdulillah, I was able to finish my PhD degree in 2 years, and I came back to Sudan. My time in the American University of Beirut, this is the time in which a big change has happened in my life. Yes.
Yeah, and when I was reading your paper about that time, because I've been to the American University in Beirut, it's a very beautiful campus.
Yes.
It looks out on the Mediterranean. It's
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah.
But you mentioned at that time, it was still seen as where they were going to have classes on Christianity in the church, forced for the Muslim students 3 times a week. There was still this idea of we need to kind of like civilize or indoctrinate.
Yes. You see, the university was, until I think the 20s or so, it was not the American University. Its name was the Syrian Protestant College. So when it became the American University of Beirut, they still had the same Christian missionary spirit. And what they did was to, and of course, it was really a tacit sort of mission to change the Muslim youth. Not, they know that they cannot make them Christian as such. A person who already started as a youngster to believe in one God, one supreme God, Almighty God, cannot be sort of changed into believing in Trinity and these things. So the issue was to make them to civilize, between two quotation, to civilize the Muslim student and to change him into a westernized person, Americanized. So, but still the Christian aspect was there. We were forced to attend this called assembly. It is a 3-credit hour, like a course. Everyone has his seat. If he's absent, they will know he's absent. And he's allowed only 3 cuts per semester. So we used to come to listen. Generally, the talks would be within this line of secularization. And then not clearly a Christian, but sort of disguised within a framework of secularization. Then after the talk is finished, then the organs will start beautiful music, and then they will read a hymn, and everybody is to stand up. The Christian students would read the hymn. The Muslims will just stand there. You see, and this was forced on us 3 times. If you say, I don't want to attend, they will not force you, but you will have to take alternative activity. They give you books to summarize, do this, which
Extra
is very
work.
difficult, you see. And many, of course, Muslim students would say they are already overburdened with assignments and things, so they will just come to the church. These were held in the university church. So I think it was a very well organized plan. There is a compulsory course for every student, whether he's in medicine or engineering or history or whatever. He will have to take a course titled Islamic philosophy. Now, this Islamic philosophy is really a course where you begin as a young person coming from Syria or Afghanistan or Pakistan or Sudan, just finished secondary school and accepted Islam as his. Then he comes and then he's taught Al-Kindi says the moon is in the second heaven. And he said, all this stuff which the Muslim philosophers at the time copied from the Greeks.
Right. The kind of Ptolemaic universe. And
Yes, and these things will shock us. These are our Muslim scholars talking things that so archaic. Yes.
So you're saying, oh yeah, this is archaic. This isn't in line with the modern cosmology and modern scientific worldview.
Yes.
And so you think that in a sense they were trying to present Islam in a way like it's backward, it's silly.
Yes. And not only this, but they will come to talk about certain values. Islam is talking about chivalry, but already the Arabs were fighting against each other. Islam spoke about generosity. Already they used to do this in their Jahiliyyah. So there is nothing new that Islam came with. Not only this, but when it comes to the teaching of history, a little bit of history, they only speak about the war between Ali ibn Abi Talib, wa karramallahu wajhah, and between Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, radiyallahu anhu. Also, they speak about Waqi'at al-Jamal, where the problem after the killing of Uthman and so. So this is the history. This is your history.
Right. So they basically focus on the contentious issues, and they show the kind of difficult aspects of Islam.
Yes, I do remember. Whether this was the general curriculum or whether that particular teacher who was teaching us was doing, but it really infuriated me. And then I would spend hours whenever he comes and gives one thing which does not seem to be right. Then I will argue with him, and much time of the class is wasted in our arguments. You see, together. Then I will go to the library and read about Islam. I did not read the Quran until that time. I didn't read the whole Quran, only what Juzu Amma and this which were taught to us we had to memorize as pupils. So now I had to go to read the Quran. In order to be able to.
So it was really in reaction to this. Essentially, this is still. Was this in the 50s that you were there still?
In the 50s,
so in the 50s, so you're still talking about a Muslim world that's largely. The colonial period is kind of coming to an end. There's these anti-colonial movements.
Yeah.
But basically, these schools are where the Western powers are saying, okay, we're going to educate and Westernize so that we can have a kind of magisterial or administrative elite class of people in the Muslim world that think like us, that look, that act like us, that dress like us, that eat like us, and they kind of serve our interests.
Yes.
And they can run their countries for us.
Yes, and that is indeed so, because at that time the Sudan was still under British, it was colonized by the British. When I came in 1953, it's only in 1956 that the Sudan got its independence. At that time, people were what we call high-class people in the Sudan. They were British-oriented completely. Some of them, they will have bars in their sitting rooms. They will offer alcoholic drinks to their guests. So that was the case indeed, yes. So when I came in the American University of Beirut and I had this, I developed this reaction. As time went on, I became really tried to convince my lecturer, but I ended up convincing myself. So it was then that I started to, and this was the reason why when I started to study psychology, I could not tolerate the principles, the theories, and the practices of Freudian psychoanalysis. At that time, Freud was the king of psychology. Yeah.
So you graduate, and then your experience at the university there was your kind of, you could even say your kind of awakening, being someone who was born and raised Muslim in a Muslim society, but then you're challenged with this alternative worldview, which is actually very critical and looking down on the traditional Muslim worldview. And so in response to that, you feel inspired, like, I have to understand my own tradition to really understand, to prove, because what they're saying about it, I know in my heart it's not true, but I can't intellectually explain their faults. So that sparked that in you.
Yes.
So then you graduate, and then after you get your PhD, where do you go?
After I got my PhD, I came back to Sudan. I did not wish to leave the Sudan. But while I was doing my PhD in Leicester, I needed one thesis which one colleague, classmate wrote at the time and got his degree. And I needed that. So I sent a letter to the head of the postgraduate studies in our department. I remember his name up to now. His name is Korf. And he was a very, very... I can tell you another story about Korf here, just for your interest. When I received a scholarship to study between two inverted commas, I will tell this story. When I got the scholarship, Rockefeller scholarship, to study for my master's, they gave me the scholarship for a year. I must finish my master's in 1 year. So I divided the courses between the 2 semesters, and I started to write my thesis. The supervisor who was supposed to do my thesis was an American he was a very lazy lecturer. So I write a chapter and I bring it to him. Then I come tomorrow. No, I didn't do it. The next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, he doesn't read. And then one day I came to the department, to his office, in this college hall we have in the university, we have very large pillars. So when I came, I saw him hiding behind the pillar, you see. And then I saw him, so I just went right straight to him. His name was Barwood. Dr. Barwood, you are hiding here from me. Yes, you Badri, you caught me. Then he said, I'm sorry, I didn't read your chapter yet. Okay, so I just went to this Korf. Korf was the head of the postgraduate in them. So I went to Korf. I told him the whole story. I don't have time. This man is not going to. I mean, this was a man whom, within my heart, I wished if he were a Muslim. Because then he said to me, don't go to him again. On paper, he is your supervisor. In reality, I will be your supervisor. Just bring your material to me. So I told him about my thesis, my subject. I wrote the first chapter. Any chapter I give to him, it would be corrected the next morning and put in the bulletin board for me. So he finished the thesis for me and told me, now you take this thesis and go to Barwood and tell him, look here, you have no right to change a sentence in this. Only you correct the English. This is your job. So I went to him, I said, look here, Professor Korf tells you, you are only to correct the language of this, but not to make any ideas or any change. He did so. Now, this Korf, when I was in Leicester, I sent him, I need such and such a thesis. He sent it to me and then he told the head of our department, And then the head of the bar wrote to me, you have a job in the American University of Beirut. When you finish your PhD, you have a job. We are having a job for you. So I came back, but I didn't want to go to the American University of Beirut. I wanted to go to work in Sudan. The only place there where that suits my specialization was that the Higher Teacher Training College. It was called the Institute of Education at the time. So I applied there, but the people in charge, at that time I became an Islamically oriented, and still the vice chancellor or president of that institute, together with the undersecretary of the Ministry of Education, everything was in English, written in English, because at that time still the influence of the British was very strong. And they disliked those people who are Islamically oriented.
Right.
So they refused to accept me. At that time, I had the letter of the head of the department of the American University in my pocket. But I was seeking a job with very low, of course, the pay of the American University is cannot be compared with what I would have gotten in the Sudan. But then I found that they were not cooperating. They refused. So I just went to the American University of Beirut. I do remember when I met the undersecretary, he told me, no, you don't teach here. I may take you to teach in a secondary school. So I said to him, okay, khalas, I leave that. And I went to the American University.
So you wanted to go home and teach at home and,
and stay in the Sudan.
Stay in your country. And you had this degree from, PhD from a British university, but the British-controlled Sudan, they didn't like that you were Muslim and that you really represented Islam.
Yeah, at that time, the Sudan already got its independence. But as you said, they left behind people who were black in color, but white in their hearts. Not white in the sense of good heart, but white in the sense of...
They thought like the
British, like Europeans, yeah. Yeah, this is very interesting, because after that, I went to the American University of Beirut. Then I wrote to them a letter. Again, after 1 year I stayed there, I wrote a letter to the same head of the institute that I wanted to join in Sudan. So I sent him a letter. But the letter had the letterhead American University of Beirut. And all the at that time correspondence was in English. So I wrote in English, please, I already applied to you last year and there was a problem, you didn't take me, now I am applying again, and so on. And I signed it. So the letter went to the secretary of the, and then it was moved. An American from the American University is applying. They didn't even look at the signature, the name there. So I immediately, by return of post, I received a letter telling me that, yes, we did not find your earlier application, but now we welcome you, please come, we will give you a salary, so, and a very high salary as an expatriate. And please tell us, have you been in Africa before? Have you had any something? Did you get malaria? Did you get?
Right.
So I knew that they thought that I am an American, because they didn't look at the name. They looked at the big name up there, right. American University of Beirut. Then I wrote them a letter. You misunderstood me. I am Malik Badri, the one who have applied last year. So they never wrote back to me again.
Wow.
Yes. Yes. So I continued in the American University of Beirut. It was, I think, a good experience, really.
And so how many years did you teach there?
I taught really not so many years. I taught for 2 years. Then I got an offer from the University of Jordan. Please come to us as visiting senior lecturer or associate professor at the time. And we need someone to help establish the Department of Psychology there. Before me, there was a Syrian psychologist who stayed for a short time and left. So I went there and I helped to establish the Department of Psychology in the University of Jordan. This was in 1963.
So at what point did you meet Malcolm?
Oh, that was very late. It was it was much earlier. I think it was in 1958 or so. I just got my MA from the American University of Beirut, and I went to Sudan. I spent a year there in our school, in the Ahfad school. Then somebody told me there is an American Muslim in this big hotel, at the time, Grand Hotel. So I just went to see him.
You hadn't heard of him yet?
No. I didn't know of the black Muslims or Malcolm X or any. Only I just wanted to entertain him as a Muslim. So I went to him. He was so happy to see me. Then I took him and we to the market, and he had the cine camera. And he told me the white Americans are telling our black brothers that Africa has no culture. That's what at that time. And now I am coming here to document the culture, of Africans. He came to Sudan. He would tell me about the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, he would say. And I knew that he was deviant in his thought. But he was so enthusiastic about it, I did not wish to. I simply tell him about true Islam. So I took him around, we pray, then he knew the life. Sudanese in general are very warm to foreigners. And he was very happy to be in Sudan. And he felt somehow that this might have been his own country in the past, you see. So
yeah, he probably looked like a Sudanese.
Yes. Of course, a very handsome and tall man. He speaks so beautifully, mashallah, at that time.
And had he already been to Mecca for a pilgrimage?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
This is his first trip out of America.
This was 58.
Yeah.
So I spoke to him about it. Then he went to America, back to America, and they were very staunch followers of Elijah Muhammad. So he would speak. Then another Sudanese met him there who also influenced him. This Sudanese was not like me. He's still alive and he has a very good relationship. He had a good relationship with Malcolm. Now this Sudanese would, after Malcolm speaks, then he will stand up and talk. And he says, no, this is not true. Because they used to think of Elijah Muhammad as a messenger of God. No, and then he will tell them what Islam is. Then they would like to kill him, the audience were so. Then Malcolm would say, no, I know the Sudanese, I have been in Sudan. He let him say what he wants to say. So,
SubhanAllah.
Now,
so already Malcolm must have been processing, experiencing traditional Muslim societies, especially African Muslim societies.
Yes.
And like you mentioned, he was praying. You guys would visit the mosque, and he would pray with you.
Yes.
And then coming back, he must have already been reflecting on the inconsistencies or just the differences.
Yes. Maybe at that time, But at that time, he was very staunch.
Yeah.
Sort of black. Still, it was black is beautiful.
For sure.
And
complete loyalty to Elijah Muhammad, because he said he saved me from prison, from my life, and all these things. So he saw him really as his like savior.
Yeah. Not only this, but he used to believe that that the black, the white people are some David or somebody in the past was making experiments.
Yeah.
And then
Yaqub, the scientist Yaqub.
Yes. Yeah. And he made some mistake, and then it came out the white man.
The white man is the mistake. And then was banished from Africa to the caves of Europe, the Caucasus caves. Yeah. I know the story.
He had all these funny stories. Yeah. But of course, I would not say to him that this is nonsense. I simply tell him about that in Islam we have people who are white, we have people who are brown, people who are black, and the brotherhood of belief is more.
And what would he say at that
He wouldn't. He would just put it aside. But it would seep in his subconscious, and rationally he must have been shaken, you see, by this visit. So we continued to write to each other. And I began to feel that he was actually changing. But the great change happened to him after he started to break away from Elijah Muhammad. Then he just went to Hajj. And in Hajj, he was really moved to see white people, black people. And then he wrote this, I think, in Life magazine at the time. There are black, we sit in the same carpet, we break the same bread. They are as white as snow, and they don't even, are not even conscious of this color difference. So he was changed completely. And when he changed, he started to remember what I used to talk to him about. So he looked for, among the Hajjis, he saw some people with turbans and white garments. Are you from the Sudan? They said, yes. They said, do you know a man called Malik Badri? Yes, we know him, of course. He's the son of so-and-so. He's a very famous man. He's my father, not me at the time. So they tell them, yes, we know him, but he's now in the American University of Beirut. So he came to the American University of Beirut, and he looked for someone who is dark.
Right, he changed his plane ticket just to visit you.
Yes, and this young man told him, do you know Malik Badri? Yes, he's my uncle. He was my nephew. So Allah has made it in such a way that, so while
he looked for an African, and then the first African he said, do you know Malik Badri?
The first person, yeah, he said, and he's living here. This is my house was just next to them, to the campus. So I had this small flat. I was living with my wife there and one daughter. So he came and he rang. There is this dictaphone where the visitor would press a bell and the telephone would ring up. The telephone rang. I took the telephone. Yes, and he said, this is Malik al-Shabbaz. He called himself Malik al-Shabbaz. Shabbaz is the eagle, it seems, yeah. So I said, you mean Malcolm X? He said, yes, it is him, with that golden voice. So I just ran down the stairs. I met him. We hugged, and I took him up to my flat. We ate lunch, and then he said to me, I don't like this city, Beirut. But I changed my ticket. My ticket was Jeddah, Casablanca, New York. I changed it to Beirut, New York, just to see you. So we chatted, and I told him, now let us, I want you to talk in campus. He said, yes, I will be happy to do that. Then I said to him, okay, I will see to it that, but then I remember in that lunch when we ate, he said to me, you know, Brother Malik, I'm going back to the States and I will be shot, I will be killed. But he said it as if he said, I'll be going to back to the United States and I'm going to have a good meal, or I'm going to, as if
just matter of fact.
Just a matter of fact, and without any fear or whatever. He was quite sure. And then I said, how come? He said, I know my people. I built it. And now I'm a true Muslim. They cannot tolerate me because I'm started to speak about the follies of Elijah Muhammad, and they are going to kill me. Then I wanted him to speak in the campus. So I went to our head of department. Please, I want Malcolm X is here. I want him to make a talk in campus. No. This is a man. I cannot decide on this. You go to the dean. The head of department was a Christian Maronite. Go to the dean. The dean was also a Christian Maronite. His name is Hananiah. I said, Dean Hananiah, can I want to have Malcolm? No. This is a man who is, you go and talk to the vice president. So I went to the vice president. Again, his name is Fuad Sarrouf. And he was also he's a great scholar. He was a great scholar. But of course, again, he could not decide. I'm sorry, he will have to go to the president. So the president, his name was Norman Burns. So he said to me, you cannot see the president, but I will talk to him, whether he will agree or not. So come to me next morning. I came to him. He said, no, the president said this man is an enemy of America, and this campus is American. The campus of the American University of Beirut. He is not allowed to speak in this campus. So I said, okay. So I went to we had our Sudanese Cultural Center. It's only facing the American University of Beirut, not far away from it. And the street called Shari Abdel Aziz, the street of Abdel Aziz. So I went to him and I told the cultural, I didn't talk to him about Malcolm X or his greatness. There is a black American who would like to give a lecture and would like to host him in this. He said, yes, of course. So I told the students, Malcolm X speaks, put signs. So they put it everywhere. Malcolm X speaks in the Sudanese Cultural Center. So I was in my house. It was about 7 in the evening. I came. The lecture was supposed to start at about 8. So I came with my wife. The students booked 2 seats for me in the front there. But when I came, I found the whole road of King Abdel Aziz crowded with people. The whole of the American University came to this small place. And the road was no traffic in the road. And they put loudspeakers outside for people to hear in the street.
So it just shut down the whole street?
Shut down the whole street. Then we sat down and he spoke. I haven't heard a man who speaks in English the way Malcolm speaks. The way, the audience to him are like a piece of mud or plasticine. He can shape it in any way he wishes. I do remember he spoke in certain, and people became so enthusiastic that and felt a lot of pain. Some were tearful So tears were in their cheeks. As a psychologist, I was looking around to see them, also the influence of. And then in this condition, he cracks a joke. Then, still tears in their face, they laugh. Yes.
So just the oratory ability to deeply affect people in the painful realities, and then immediately bring it with a joke and have them cry laughing in the same moment.
MashaAllah, I think he was really a phenomenon. And of course, this is added to the way he looked, his height, his the way he can move, his body language. I mean, it was. I said that he and an Egyptian orator, Muslim orator. To me, these were the most influential people in their talking.
What's the Egyptian one?
His name is Saeed Ramadan. He is the father.
Oh, Tariq Ramadan's father. Huh?
Oh, yeah, Tariq Ramadan's father. And he once came to Sudan, and he decided to give a talk in a city which was actually a city of workers. It's called Adbara. This city was really dominated by the communist. And he went into the club, the workers' club, very large place. So the club was full of no place for anybody to sit. So some people just sat on the wall. All around the wall, the brick wall, people were sitting up there. Then when he spoke and moved people, and he came to towards the end of his speech, and he spoke very enthusiastically, Allahu Akbar, so on. Then people sitting on the chairs, they were moved, they stood up, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Those people on the walls, they forgot they are sitting on a wall, and they tried to stand up, they fell from the wall to the ground, they were unconscious. Yes,
they were like in a trance.
Yes, like a trance. Yes. I think that these two were really gifted people. Yeah. So Malcolm, after that, he went back to the States. The American university was good enough now to allow him, when he came again, to allow him to speak, and he.
This was when he came back a second time to Beirut?
Yes.
What do you think changed? Why do you think they changed their...
I think they felt that if they don't allow him to speak, he will speak somewhere else, and it would not look good on them, you see, because they must have known from his speech in the Sudanese Cultural Center that it's a shame not to have allowed him to talk in the campus. Maybe even the president himself would have felt that he did a mistake in refusing to. But then soon after that he was assassinated.
So he came a second time and then he returned.
Yes.
And so what about like any personal interactions or personal conversations that stick out, or even correspondences with him? Is there anything that he said or that you said to him that really sticks out that you'll never forget?
Not really, but most of our letters, he spoke to me about his family, his wife and his daughters, and it was more or less normal kind of
just friendly
talk, But then I came to America in 1976 after the son of Elijah Muhammad changed the movement to true Islam. Yes. Waris ad-Din. And then I came to I was invited by the by the Association of Muslim Social Scientists in America. I gave a talk in Indianapolis at the time. But then they told me, now it is the time for you to stay with us for a few months to help change the black Muslims. They want to change to true Islam, but we want people to help them to go through this. And you are here, so please help us. So I did. I went, they used to call it temples at the time. So I went to Chicago, to the big mosque, and I spoke there. I gave a number of lectures on true Islam. And at times, Waris al-Din would come and listen. Or at times, he will start the talk, and then after that, I will speak. Then we were told there are a number of temples in different parts in Virginia. Go around and let us attend Jum'ah with them. So I went with Dr. Ja'far Sheikh Idris, who was then with me. He was a Sudanese philosopher, distinguished Sudanese philosopher. And he was also helping in the same way. We went to the Jum'ah prayer. Then the Khatib of Jum'ah would speak. And would speak the way he speaks in an auditorium. And then when he speaks enthusiastically, all the people in the Jum'ah praying would shout, yes, brother, go ahead, brother, you see. So, and then he started the prayer, and he would, when he makes ruku', he makes loudly, Allah has heard to the one, Sami' Allahu liman hamida, you translate it in English, and he would,
so
he would say it loudly, you
English.
see, yes, yeah. And the whole prayer was confusing. And when we were praying like this, shall I continue in this prayer? Because I had with me a group of Muslim brothers, black Muslim brothers, who were Sunni. They had no relationship with the black Muslims. And they did not wish to come to this temple. But I asked them to come, and we came. So they were very angry with me. How come you bring us here? We wasted the Jum'ah now. And I said, never mind, let us be helpful to these people. So I prayed this kind of funny Jum'ah. But after that, I came to the Imam. Please, Ya Akhi, this is not, what you have done is not proper in Islam. It is not correct. He said, this is what I know. I don't know. You see, people cannot in Jum'ah shout and talk, and people should be quiet and to listen to the Imam. And then the prayer is supposed to be in this manner. Then he told me, brother, I don't know. Next Jum'ah you come to us. You give the khutbah and you pray, and then you teach us what to do it. So I came after that. Then I told these brothers, you know, if we don't do this, then the way he's behaving would be considered as the right way, and it would be very difficult to change after that. But now, since Waris al-Din is changing, they are ready to change. So now let us put them in the right track. Yeah, I think it was a very, very rich experience at the time. I think it was...
amazing time.
Yes, yes.
So you spent time with Imam Warithuddin Muhammad and...
Yes. And I think at that time even I had a few brothers. Still, two of them came to this university, and they looked for me, but I was in Sudan. One of them is Farrakh Khan, brother Farrakh Khan.
Yeah. So you met him as well?
Yes. I met him when I came to Chicago early, and then I met him again. And then he came to Sudan again, and I met him with another brother. I forget his name now. But we were very intimate together, the other brother, you see. And then Farrakh Khan came here. He said, well, Malik is not here because I was in Sudan. So I just want to see his kids, you see. So my wife brought the children, and yes, we had a very intimate relationship at the time.
Was Farrakhan still under Imam W.D. Muhammad, Warithuddin Muhammad,
At that time,
before he broke off?
Yeah, he was with him, but it was not quite because this other brother, Kareem, I think brother Kareem, if I can remember well, he after that he wrote to me, and he said to me, we want to make a film on Malcolm X. Before the film that was made, a long time before.
Before Spike Lee.
Yeah. And he said to me, we would like you to come with James Baldwin. Yeah, to write the script of the film.
Amazing.
Because the main intention of the film is to show that Elijah Muhammad was really a great man who have been misunderstood and mistreated. So I answered him, I said to him, my dear brother, Elijah Muhammad, at one time, he used to say, La ilaha illallah, Elijah Muhammad is messenger of Allah. This man was deviant, was astray, was wrong, and I am not ready to come to try to write a script for a film to commemorate his...
to glorify
him. Yes, to glorify him. That was the end of our relationship. But again, they continued and they came to Sudan. I met them after that. The whole idea of the film was cancelled after that. Yeah.
So did you ever meet James Baldwin?
Huh?
Did you meet James Baldwin?
No, but I read his book, The Fire Next Time. I was quite impressed by the way he wrote. Particularly, he wrote a few things about the Muslims. How they protect their women, they don't eat, they don't drink. It's very beautiful words. I put it in one of my books, Islam and Alcoholism. I took the whole quotation, I put it in my book. Yeah, I didn't meet him, but I wish if I could have met him. He was a great writer.
So if we pivot then, you... At some point, you come to Kuala Lumpur, and you've been here for 20-some years, a professor here.
Yes.
So that was after Beirut?
Yes, that was long after Beirut. I came to I worked in Saudi Arabia for some time, it's a long time, in fact, 5 years. I was in the university. At that time, it used to be called Riyadh University. Now it is King Saud University. I spent there, in fact, I was given the title of professor there in 1971. So from 1971 until 1977, I was there. Only 1 year I spent with UNESCO in Ethiopia as an expert in psychology there. But after that, because at that time there was the Sudan politically was under Numeri, and at that time Numeri was communist oriented. So anybody who had an Islamic leaning or movement oriented in Islam was put in prison. I was imprisoned for some time. And then after that, in 1971, he took over. This coup was in 1969. So for 2 years, I stayed in Sudan, and it was very difficult, people following you wherever you go, secret police, and they were so much influenced by the Soviet Union at the time, to the extent that I remember we had the birthday of the Prophet, the Mawlid. There is in Durman, where I live, there is a very big place which was once the mosque of the Mahdi, of the Khalifa of the Mahdi. That place will have the Mawlid. Then they discouraged it, and they were preventing people from having the usual Islamic ceremonies in it. But when Lenin's birthday came, they made a big show of that. It was really very, very communist oriented.
Wow! So they celebrated Lenin's birthday, but not the Prophet's
they
birthday.
were publicly celebrating it, but there was no enthusiasm for the birthday of the Prophet. Of course, Nimeri overturned and became a Sufi, and he crushed the communists. He hanged their leaders just because they removed him. Of course, they tried to get rid of him. So during this time, I went to Saudi Arabia, and when this regime finished and Numeri himself changed, I came back to Sudan. And this was, it must have been in 1984 or so, I came back to Sudan after a journey of Saudi and Ethiopia. But then I came to the University of Khartoum. I didn't come to Malaysia here until 1991. And when I came here, I had already reached the age of 60. So I was to retire from the University of Khartoum. So I retired, and I decided to make a branch of our university, our private university, which is the grandchildren's university, to make a branch of it in the little town where my father started girls' education, to make a branch of it there. So I was happy to go there. My brother, who was the president of the university, was happy. The Minister of Higher Education told me to put this in writing. I made the application. He agreed. And then, but before he agreed, I had already found the location, the building, everything. I was ready to go. Then this Saudi Abdul Hamid Abu Suleiman, who was director of this university, International Islamic University, came to Sudan, and he was looking for me. He wanted to bring me to UIA here. And then he went and visited the Minister of Higher Education. Where is Malik Badri? He said, Malik is going to start a branch of his university in the little town, so and so. He said, don't approve to him. Anybody can start a branch, but nobody can do work on Islamic psychology the way Malik is doing. I want him in Kuala Lumpur. So he said to me, the minister told me, I'm sorry, I cannot approve to you this. You should go to Kuala Lumpur. I do remember this very well because these days I came, my mother was still alive at the time. So she did not want me to go to the little town too. So I said, okay, now khalas, this is finished. But I'm going to Kuala Lumpur, I'm going to Malaysia. Will you agree if I go? She said yes. Then I got a ticket from air ticket. You remember at that time the air tickets were a number of pages in which with carbon copies, things like this, yeah. So I got one ticket like this, and then I was to take a connection in Oman. But then, while I was waiting there, then I see that everybody in the airport in Khartoum, was stopped, and there was a red carpet was put, and our plane, were not allowed to take the plane, you see. It was late. Then what is happening? What is happening? They say Gaddafi all of a sudden decided to come to Sudan. So we just waited. I was looking from the window. I see Gaddafi coming and the music and so. So I lost my connection. So I took back my bag and went back home. Then I told them, I'm sorry I couldn't come. So they said, never mind, forget this. We'll send another ticket to you. So they sent another ticket. And I came after a week or so. Then I put my bags to be weighed. Then the man told me when processing the ticket, he said, I am very sorry you cannot travel. Why? He said, because in Kuala Lumpur, the agent, instead of cutting the copy, he cut the actual ticket. So you'll have to go back. You cannot travel. So I took my bag again for the second time. I went back home and I went straight to my mother. Mother, if you don't like me to travel, tell me don't travel, I will not travel. But if you, please, just tell me exactly. Is it you don't want me to travel? She said, no, son, khalas, now I really didn't like, but now you can travel, yes.
You didn't have the idhn yet.
Yeah. So, alhamdulillah, I came, it was in 1991, I came as visiting professor. And then in 1992, I came to take the job on the state for more than 20 years. Yes. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your work, because when we talk about psychology, and you being a pioneer in this field of putting the 1400-year tradition of Islamic psychology, which is incredibly rich and incredibly deep, putting that in conversation with modern Western psychology. So if you could just, give a brief reflection on what is the difference between the Islamic understanding of the psyche or the soul versus the kind of modern Western.
Yes. You see, this goes back to my when I first came to Beirut. It's the same thing, I told you about this reaction. Then when I studied psychology, then it was Freud, you see. It was the Oedipus complex, and it was psychosexual development, and the baby, when he is born, sucking his mother's breast, again, it is a sexual thing. And when then the sex, the libido would go to the anal areas, and then in the anal stage, all this nonsense.
Right. Every problem with every person has to do with their early sexuality and issues, like they want to have sex with their mother and
Yes. I think that at that time, and then the idea about God to Freud himself, that psychoanalysis came to free man from the superstition of religion, and
religion is pathology, right?
Yes, and that obsessional rituals. Religion is like the obsessive compulsive disorder of humanity.
Right. He even saw it as like an issue with the father, right? The God.
Yes.
Being this supernatural father, and this.
Yes. So this was very confusing to young people at the time. I did not accept it, and I argued against that. And then, particularly about hysteric also again, then I will be told, if you don't accept, give us the alternative. There was no alternative in the 50s. So I was in a dilemma as what to think, how the idea of Islamization came to me at that time through the work of Muhammad Qutb. You know this little book that he wrote, in Arabic it is called Shubuhat Hawla al-Islam. In English, the book is translated as Islam, the Misunderstood Religion. He had a chapter on Freud and on psychoanalysis, and I was moved by the way he... And I think Muhammad Qutb and Abu al-A'la al-Mawdudi, both of these great scholars, did a lot of service to young people. And of course, Sayyid Qutb as well. Now, these people were talking about what we call today Islamization in the 40s and 50s. No other person was talking like that. And when Muhammad Qutb, he says, when he started to criticize Freud, the whole of the Egyptian psychological society and psychologists, who are you to criticize Freud? Now, I think it was at that time that I started to think about an Islamic approach to what we study. But I didn't have a clear alternative at the time. I was young, a student still in the freshman. But all the time I tried to find an Islamic approach to... I do remember even as a freshman, we are supposed to write a paper. I used to keep all these papers. I wrote a paper, Islam and Iconoclastic Movement. I wrote this just as a term paper, which was highly rated by the professor at the time. But it was this that I was comparing this with Christianity and other religions, where people worship images, worship statues. Then in a psychology course on child development, I wrote Child Development in Islam. Course on social movements, I wrote about Ikhwan al-Muslimun as a social movement. So it is, I think I was, even at that time, I was after a form of Islamizing my field. But I only took this approach more seriously when I was in Jordan, in the University of Jordan. And I made a public lecture at that time. You see here, Western psychology is not all Western. Some parts of it are really scientific. And in this sense, we need to actually to be able to differentiate between what is proper and what is... and that is why I used to say at the time, people who try to bring Islam into, for example, statistical society or in experimental psychology, studying reaction time or learning by conditioning, they have nothing to do with... if you are a good Muslim, you will appreciate how Allah created this associative ability in humans so that they can associate between two things and give a new thing some of the characteristics of the old things. It's not, a dog or a bell rings and he salivates. It's not something by which we try to say everything in this world is association and there is no truth. This has nothing to do with the truth.
Right.
Yes.
So is that behaviorism?
Yes, this is behaviorism, yeah.
This idea that the human beings are just reacting to stimuli.
Yes.
And that there's nothing beyond that. It's just...
there is no truth.
There's no truth,
Yeah,
there's no morality, there's
most of these behaviorists start in the laboratory but end up as philosophers. Look at Skinner, for example. His work as Ferris is simply reinforcing a rat in a Skinner's box, and when he presses a certain lever, then food would come, and then this is reinforced. I mean, this is simple. I mean, people knew this since centuries before Skinner came. I mean, this idea of training an animal by successive approximations to a certain end gradually. If you deprive him of food and then you give him a little food to go to one direction and then until he learns how to catch a prey for you without eating it, waiting for you to take the rabbit or to take whatever he catches. Now this is conditioning at the highest level of conditioning of Pavlov. But to go from this and to say there is no truth in this world, that everything is... He ended up as a philosopher when he wrote his book Beyond Freedom and Dignity. Is this philosophy? It's not psychology. It's not science.
Well, this is one of the problems, right? Because when we talk about the hard sciences, like you mentioned, chemistry and all these things, there's certain observable phenomena, but the social sciences,
yes,
studying the societies and human beings and these things, it's not all cut and dry. And you mentioned in the book Contemplation about how that's why in like physics, for instance, there can be a paradigm shift.
Yes.
Where there's a paradigm, Newtonian worldview, and then all of a sudden the research shows that it's inconsistent with reality. And so then it's overthrown.
Yeah.
But in psychology, there's not really that type of thing. There's different views and different schools of thought, but none actually overcomes the other and becomes the king, because in a certain sense, it's having to do with the subjective self, right?
Yes. I think even though, for example now, even though Freudian psychoanalysis has been exposed, now there is this Johnson, she has written a book, Freud and Cocaine. And she showed clearly that Freud, quite a lot of these bizarre theories, sexual theories, he wrote while he was addicted to cocaine. He had a problem in his nose, and he used to sniff cocaine to relieve the pain. Then he became addicted to it. So here, I think, in spite of this fact, and in spite of the fact that it has been clearly shown that he was lying concerning his treatment of some of the patients, which he mentioned, like this case of this young lady whom he said he begins to develop some paralysis, difficulties in talking, and then he and Breuer, they said they treated her, and then they discovered that she actually had a physical disease, something, a form of meningitis, and she was in a Swiss hospital. You know that the historian of psychology went all the way. He found the card that she has written to a very old friend in Vienna. He took the card. The writing is not clear. He traveled all the way to Canada. They used some fluorescent light to bring out faded writing. It came up that she went to the hospital in Switzerland, and he found her file. She was, the symptoms that Freud described as psychological were actually physical. But still, you will find any textbook of psychology bringing this lady and saying how Freud treated her and how she came to this. I think that, as you said, there is no paradigm shift. For example, it's true that we had a revolution really behavior therapy, when it first appeared, and the famous study by Ising, in which he compared thousands of patients who received psychoanalytically oriented treatment and those who did not find beds in hospitals and where they received no treatment at all, he found that after 1 year, 2/3 of the first group improved. He found those who received no therapy, also 2/3 improved. And it was like a bombshell in the face of psychoanalysis. This was like it could have made a paradigm shift, but it didn't make. All theories of psychology and practices, they seem to continue side by side in spite of... I think that we need to differentiate. When we come to scientific psychology, that aspects of psychology that are really scientific, you will find that it is only in a no man's land, very small area, where psychology mixes with pure sciences. For example, perception, how we see, how we hear, optical illusions, this is science. When you come to physiological psychology, it's physiology and psychology mixing together. You come to genetic psychology, you come to behavior genetics, you come to psychopharmacy, or these are all a small between the two, no man's land between psychology and these fields. And also when the scientific method is used in a proper manner, even in social psychological research, this is accepted. But other than that, even those results that you get in social psychological studies in the United States cannot be applied or accepted in other cultures. For example, this famous experiment whereby some person would come and they cheated the subject, telling him that he is going to say to press a button to electrocute someone if he made a mistake, and then every time they tell him increase the current, the man comes in a white coat of a scientist and tells him, give him more, and the person would give him more, and then that fellow would the light will come out in his cabin, and he knows that he's being electric, but he's not electric. Then he shouts, I'm going to die. So, but he continues. So he says that people under the influence of someone who is really supposed to be a scientist or not, then they will do dangerous. I don't think this will apply in other cultures. Yeah. I'm very sure. I mean, if this was done in a country like Muslim country like Saudi Arabia or even in the Sudan today, I'm sure he will say to the man, even though he's in this
white lab coat,
I cannot kill the man. You see, what are you going to do? Yeah.
Well, do you think that because I've heard someone say that in the medieval period of Europe, if someone with a black coat came and said, this is the truth, right? The priest.
Yes.
You would say, okay. But now someone in a white coat comes, the scientist, right? When they want to advertise a product, they say, 9 out of 10 doctors prefer this medicine.
Yes.
And then people say, okay, we'll accept.
Yes.
The white lab coat, those are now the new priesthood of the secular society.
Yes.
So in the West, it's true that...
Yes, I think that somebody spoke about psychology as being a religion, and that the priests are the psychologists. And I think there is some truth in this. Today we hear that that it has been discovered that if a child is brought up, such a thing will happen to him. Or if you sleep early and so on. If you are deprived from sleep, this will happen to you. I mean, all of these things, people, they will take for granted. It is true. Yes. Yes. So it is really, I think, Muslim psychologists today will have to look at two important aspects. The first one is whether the material is really scientifically true, or is it the ideas of the therapist? And here, the prejudice of those who talk about research is even clear in so-called scientific studies. For example, look at this study in which this American scientist compared the brains of homosexuals with heterosexuals, according to him. And then he came and said that the brains of homosexuals, some part of their brain is different. You see, a certain structure is different from heterosexual. Therefore, homosexuality is inherited. It's in our genes. It's obviously, I mean, as soon as such a thing comes out, then all the papers, the CNN, everybody speaks. And a heritability of homosexuality has been proved by science. Then scientists go to repeat the study, and they discover that all the homosexuals that he has examined, the hypothalamus has been affected because they all died, or most of them died, from AIDS. It's not because they are homosexual. It is because the AIDS virus has had its effect in changing the structure of their brains. And also, those people... So
you can't prove causation by that?
No. And also those people whom he took as a control group, those people, when he did the postmortem and found that their hypothalamus is in some way different, because he did not even know their history before, whether they were homosexual or whether heterosexual. But when the study is corrected, nobody would write about it. No CNN will say that we have discovered this was all false. So indeed, I think even in some scientific aspects, we need to be careful about these deductions as Muslims. And then this is one aspect, you see. We should be sure about the level of, scientific level of. The second thing is whether it is culturally, because now when we talk about culture, we are not only talking about Western culture vs. Islamic culture. We are also talking about different cultures in different Muslim countries. Yeah. And for example, here in Malaysia, you can see people rarely fighting, shouting at each other.
Very calm and tranquil
Very
people.
calm, and yes. You go to Sudan or to Iraq, and every day you will have to see people shouting. This is so the cultures themselves differ. I think it is not only Islam as a culture, but Islam as a worldview make people similar. A very important study was done in Harvard by one psychologist, Pakistani psychologist. His name is Shihabuddin Mughni. And he took about 50 different Muslim countries, and he made a special study, and he discovered that there are quite a lot of similarities in the model personalities of people, whether they are in Afghanistan or whether they are in Nigeria or whatever it is. So it is true, Islam is a worldview, and we need to see this. when we come to apply psychological principles, we need to take this into consideration. We need to, we as Muslims, the therapist believes in Islam, he believes in its applications, he believes, because Islam is like a worldview that covers everything. Now, and the patient is like him. So it is not, you cannot say to a counselor, don't bring religion into, this is untrue and not useful. In a number of cases, in my own therapy, as soon as the patient begins to talk about his guilt and so, and then this is easily gone into his feeling of that Allah has rejected him, or that he had done some serious things and he feels he's bad. The treatment here for him, the treatment would be an Islamic approach of his wrong conception about the nature of God, the way he was brought up. Yeah, it's
Sure.
Yeah.
So do you think, because basically we're talking about this idea in general, that you have this kind of materialist reductionist paradigm in the modern secular world, which says all we are is kind of neurons firing in the brain, and we're a response to stimuli. But Islam, and not only Islam, but traditional cultures in general, taught that there's something deeper about the human being. That there's a soul, there's a ruh, there's a spirit. There is an eternal aspect, actually, that inhibits the body. And what's interesting about, many different cultures are different, but almost unanimously across human societies in the pre-modern period, people believe this.
Yes.
And, I follow a little bit about the philosophical discussions about the nature of consciousness, the hard problem of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
How do you explain conscious experience, that there's something that it's like to be me?
Yeah.
That I experience.
Yeah.
So do you feel like in the time of your life, from talk about the 50s where Freud was in vogue till now, Freud is, they teach him as a historical artifact, but it's not taken seriously.
Yeah.
Do you feel like things are changing, that people are opening up the paradigms more, or that people are more likely to consider other alternative paradigms, or the idea of the spirit, or that consciousness may be non-reductionist, non-material?
Yes, I think if you look at psychology talking about consciousness, at that time even they didn't wish to talk about consciousness. A famous British psychologist said that psychology, Western psychology, first threw away its consciousness, and then it threw away its mind, and accordingly now it is like a dead body without a mind, without consciousness. He was talking about behaviorism, you see. Behaviorism did not like words like mind, like consciousness, like spirit, you see. So
because they're immeasurable, right?
Yes,
they can't be tested.
Yes, they wanted anything for it to be scientific must be observed. Mm-hmm. And since we cannot observe consciousness, it is just like the soul. It is something which is untrue.
Can't observe the observer.
Yes. I think this attitude, if you look at the 50s and you look at what is happening today, you will see that the whole field of psychological sciences is moving towards a recognition of the unseen. And in this sense, even as you now spoke about physics, even physics itself is changing. Yeah. the paradigm of physics is changing, though many psychologists still cling to an old conception of physics, but this is in time is changing. We are having people like Scott Peck talking about spirituality. His book, the fact that his book, The Road Less Traveled, written early in the late 60s and or 70s, is still a bestseller. And the fact that it continued, it broke the record. This book, when he wrote it, it was in the bestsellers list for more than 10 years, which has not happened to any other book. Now, why is that? People were even in the West, they were looking for such a thing. So, indeed, I think the Western world, Western psychology will come if it is in our own lifetime. In my own lifetime, my first book in textbook of psychology speaks about telepathy, clairvoyance, and all these transpersonal phenomena as nonsense. I still remember this. And they begin to say it is only at times coincidences. You see a friend in your dream and then tomorrow you see him, but you have seen him 100 other times, but you didn't. And it's only now. This is a matter of, and then they speak about cognitive prophetic dreams as also stupid and something nonsense. And no psychologist actually believed in these phenomena at the time. Now it is a different case. Now it is the lifetime of one person. Now in half a century, I could see there is a big change. People do not accept that, particularly behaviorism came as a revolution against psychoanalysis. But it failed, it only helped phobias, obsessions, things that can be put in a stimulus response paradigm. But then the cognitive revolution came to talk about thought and beliefs. Now the third wave, the first wave was behavior therapy. The second wave is cognitive psychology, the cognitive revolution. Now the third wave of cognitive behavior therapy is going to the contemplation of the Buddhists, and they are going to all of these aspects of which are coming new terms in psychology. I think we are witnessing a slow revolution into coming back into accepting the spiritual in psychology. I mean, look at this work of positive psychology. Now that psychology has all the time been talking about trying to become like a medical science and trying to talk about pathology. They are very good in talking about pathological aspects, but not about the positive aspects in humans. All of that is leading to a new era, which is coming, inshallah.
So, do you think that, and we'll wrap it up now because we've taken a lot of your time, but what do you think in the Islamic tradition, what do you think that the Islamic tradition has to offer Western psychology? When we talk about ilm al-nafs, or even when we talk about tasawwuf as like the science, not necessarily all aspects of it, but the actual understanding of, this profound, like the signs and symptoms of the diseases of the heart and the cures of the heart, and things like that. So what do you think that the Islamic tradition could offer?
Yeah, I think that, first of all, let me talk about these aspects of small area of therapy. Now, with the Islamic cognitive therapy, Islamically oriented cognitive therapy, we are having a lot of successes in this area. I have been working in a hospital in Sudan, psychiatric hospital. And I had just finished my training in behavior therapy, but I was using an Islamically oriented behavior therapy. In fact, I was using cognitive therapy before cognitive therapy became a known. So I will come and see the patient, and then we will discuss his beliefs, his problems from an Islamic point of view, where he was wrong in bringing conclusions from wrong assumptions. And then we try to correct it, they improve. I remember the chief psychiatrist was a well-known psychiatrist. In fact, he's one of the fathers of psychiatry in Sudan. And he would tell me, now you have gone to London, you learned the new technique. All the cases in which we failed to treat as psychiatrists, 5%. He called them my 5%, you see, or our 5%. We will send to you and to see what you can do. They come to me and they improve. They improve dramatically. Not because of cognitive behavior, but because of the spiritual aspect that I introduce. For example, I have a patient, he had the phobia of death because his mother used to love him most. His mother died. Then he saw her in a dream telling him, your cousin so-and-so will join me quickly. Then it is your turn. Then he said, my cousin is still young, nothing. Then he received the message. At that time, it was a telegram. Your cousin died in a car crash. So then it is me. Then he started to develop a terrible phobia of death. And then he came to this psychiatrist. They gave him, he became very depressed. He doesn't go to his work. So then they gave him drugs as antidepressants. It didn't work. They gave him electroconvulsive therapy. They tried, some of them who are psychoanalytically oriented at that time tried to help him. Then they failed. They sent him to me. Then I tell him, now relax. I used at that time some form of electrical stimulation of the brain that makes the person go to sleep and relax. It's called electro-sleep therapy. But I use it only to help relaxation. When he's fully relaxed, then I tell him, because he was a religious man. Now imagine yourself going to Hajj. Now you can see the people around the Kaaba, so on. Now you are in front of the grave of the Prophet. His eyes are closed. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Then the tears stream from his closed eyes. What is death? Is death the end of things? Or is it the beginning of a new life? We begin to talk about this while he was relaxed. And we go step by step by step. And then, in a short time, he started to change. Then, when did your mother tell you she will join the other fellow? When your mother is speaking from another world, when she says you are next maybe after 70 years. It may be, it doesn't, because to them time is different than our time here. So this next doesn't mean that it's quick. Then we go on through this, and then I take him, when he improved, I took him to where patients were dying in the hospital, to look at terminal patients. and then they are dying. Then what is this? Then all of a sudden he came to me in one morning, smiling. Today I have done something I never thought I would do. Our neighbor, his grandmother died. I went to the graveyard. In the past, I used to not to pass, to come near the graveyard. I went, I dug the grave, and we helped very hard. I feel I'm a different man now. What can be treated other than this? So indeed, if we want to treat Muslim patients, we will have to bring Islam into consideration. Particularly, there are some cases which can never be treated without this Islamic aspect. A patient I had who had the phobia of ghosts. She will sit in the balcony when her husband goes to work. They have no children. She will sit in the balcony until he comes from work. Fear of being alone in a room. Now, how could she be treated? I tried. It did not, my therapy didn't work. But then I remembered there is a sheikh who is very well known in the area. I sent her to him. She sat with him. He read some Quran over her. He did this. And she improved. Because he has the ways of So indeed, I think we are a different culture. And at times, our Western-minded psychiatrists or even European psychiatrists may mistake a patient, a woman who comes and says, I think my husband married another woman and she did some witchcraft on me, and he will consider her as schizophrenic. But this is accepted in her. So indeed, I think that we cannot help a patient who is a good Muslim, or even any Muslim, without actually bringing these references into consideration.
Yeah, you have to really understand and acknowledge and honor someone's paradigm and their worldview and their beliefs. And
Yes, indeed. So I feel that our Muslim psychologists and psychiatrists should not just go on reading American textbooks and try to apply whatever they read as.
And there's so many within America. There's all these movements. There's transpersonal psychology, like you mentioned. There's mindfulness.
Yes.
They're starting to teach like tafakkur or contemplation and meditation in the juvenile hall or the prisons or the hospitals for terminally ill people, and they're finding that with silence, with these traditional spiritual practices, that people improve.
Yes.
And that they benefit.
Yes.
And perhaps there's a hidden treasure within our tradition of.
Yes, I know of many people who were drug addicts. They were alcoholics. They were depressed people who go to some sheikh, take a tariq, and then all of a sudden you find even physically they look different. I do remember when I was in this hospital in Khartoum working, then I received an invitation to help do research on traditional medical practices. I became a member of traditional medical practices in the WHO office in Geneva. And they told me to do some study on traditional medical practices in Sudan and Ethiopia and Saudi. I went in Sudan I said I will go and study the work of one of the most famous traditional spiritual healers. And then I do remember we had 2 patients in the hospital whom we failed to treat. And when I went to that place, it's far away from from the capital. When I went there, I went wearing a Sudanese garment and the turban just to become unknown. So I will just go there and see, observe how he treats, and I was thinking of myself as a scientist, stupidly so. So I went there. But when I went there, they took us to a large room with all the passengers who came in the bus, and we were lying on the carpet to sleep. But then all of a sudden I heard one man coming in, and then another fellow who is his friend, Dr. Malik, these are the patients we failed to treat in the hospital in Khartoum. They came here and they were treated by the Sheikh, and they stayed there to help in running the whole, yeah. So I was at once taken from that place to a special room, and I met the Sheikh, and I spoke with him, and he told me about what he does. And I wrote all this down in my paper to the WHO.
Traditional
So
healer.
it is, yes, indeed.
Alhamdulillah, your life and legacy is a great one, and hopefully it will continue to benefit us.
Inshallah.
You also are a healer in your way, especially combining the tradition with modern science, and that's what we need in this age.
Yes, indeed.
Allah bless you and thank you.
Thank you very much. Barakallah.
Thank you for listening to Path and Present Podcast. If you want to support the podcast, you can do so in a few ways. One is word of mouth. People hear about the podcast mostly from people like you who listen and like it and say, I know someone who would connect with this, who would feel this, who would enjoy this subject matter. So continue to share with your family and friends. Secondly, you can subscribe, rate, and comment on the iTunes page of Path and Present. Subscribing means that the podcast each episode will come directly to you when we release it. And rating and commenting means that it will grow and come up in the iTunes rankings, which will allow it to be available and seen by more people. And then lastly, you can support financially on Patreon. Patreon is a site which allows people to give a small amount monthly to support art or any type of content. And we have a Path and Present page on Patreon. The link is on our SoundCloud page, SoundCloud/Path and Present. And you'll find the Patreon link there. And yeah, you can support there. We're greatly appreciative of it. I guess lastly, keep us in your prayers, your positive thoughts, and your moments of remembrance. And thank you for tuning in and being part of the global Path and Present